Theodore Jordan is my guest this morning at this conference in Berlin in 2017.
Yes.
It's great to have you here. Thank you for agreeing to make this interview. Just to tell something about you, you're a specialist in osteopathic manipulative medicine.
Yes.
And specialized in neuromusculoskeletal medicine. Your focus is on the interaction between body and mind. You live and work in Columbus, Ohio, in the US.
Yes, I do.
So, okay, that's a long way coming to Germany.
Yes.
Yesterday in your lecture, you talked about osteopathy as a biological unit, as McConnell
Yes.
described it. So what's your personal opinion about this biological unit? How do you see it today?
I see it much as McConnell described, that manipulation affects the whole structure, really from the cell to the larger structure. The totality of the osteopathic concept really involves both the organism and the environment, and the environment's effect on the organism, clear down, so the environment down to the cellular level. It's a great totality. So there's so much to take into account when looking at a patient. And McConnell repeatedly tells us to keep that totality in mind at all times. And it's a kind of a difficult work to keep that huge picture of the totality in mind, yeah.
So in your practice, you not only are working with osteopathic techniques, but also with the PRRT, with the primary reflex release techniques. Could you describe this in a few words?
PRRT is actually, I think, a trademarked name from I think he's a physical therapist who came up with it. It's kind of a misnomer. I would have named it guarding reflex release technique or something, because primitive reflexes are different from what they're treating with that method. But in short, the method uses quick action to stress antagonistic muscles to release the target muscle. It's a very quick and efficient way of treating, and it's kind of its own thing. I haven't seen anything quite like that. But the principles are similar to muscle energy, but done very quickly.
Okay. So in your workshop, I think today you're treating the participants to treat traumatized patients with osteopathic techniques, but also with PRRT techniques. So what's your opinion with combining several approaches, even if they've got different philosophies?
Well, there are many, many approaches to the body, but it's still one physiology. And I love integrating and pulling ideas and concepts and enriching osteopathy with discoveries made by people around the world. The body is extremely complex, and as a complex system, we can't really predict how any one intervention will affect. So we use an intervention and see the results. Again, people around the world have come up with very creative ways to make intervention into physiology, and that very rich field of technique, all is very complementary to osteopathic work. Just to put osteopathy in a box and say, oh, no, we only do muscle energy, or we only do counter strain, or is very limiting. And the best osteopathic thinkers, like Dr. Fulford, he's the one that told me to look into primitive reflex activity as a etiology in chronic dysfunction. And once I started looking into that, I found that another extremely rich field, that primitive reflexes do play a role in chronic dysfunction in a lot of people for many different reasons. And there are ways that have been developed by brilliant people around the world to modify and integrate primitive reflexes. And some of that work can be, again, brought into osteopathy and used quite effectively.
Okay. So you mentioned him, Dr. Fulford. It will be your other workshop here at the conference. So what was so special about Dr. Fulford?
Dr. Fulford was a very special person. He was humble. He was a thinker. I only knew him for his last 4 or 5 years of life. He was in his late 80s, early 90s at the time. And every time I saw him, he was doing something different. He was constantly searching, constantly experimenting, constantly innovating to the day he died. And his results were amazing. But there's something, I think, more than... I've been called to this conference to kind of pass on some of his techniques, and that's fine. But I think the real essence of what made Dr. Fulford special was his compassion and his love. And you would see that as he loved treating children. And even in his late 80s, early 90s, he was quite bent over with age and arthritic, and looked every year of his age. But when someone placed a child into his lap, he just lit up. And it's to see that compassion and love in action. That's the inspiration to me of Dr. Fulford.
Mm-hmm. So you are a physician?
Yes, I am.
Did you do your studies at an osteopathic school or at a, let's say, normal med school?
No, an osteopathic school in America, which is full medical license plus osteopathic training.
Okay, but you concentrated on the osteopathic aspects?
Yes.
Every time?
Yes.
Okay. So, well, that was my last question. Thank you for this interview.
Okay.
It went very fast.
Yeah.
But...